Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Utterly Understandable. Today, Robbie's going to talk to us about the principles of dairy price risk management, particularly topical right now, given all the volatility we're seeing in global markets, including dairy. So, Robbie, over to you.
Cheers. Thanks, Hamish. Yeah, there's a lot obviously going on in global commodity markets at the moment, unseen volatility on the energy side, which is then feeding into the dairy supply chain, causing a lot of difficulties for people. So with that kind of in mind, we thought we'd talk a little bit holistically about what risk management is, how it applies to dairy. So I really think of risk management as a 4-step process that continues into infinity. And that is, we identify our risks, we manage our risks. We identify our risks, we measure those risks, we try to quantify them. We then manage those risks, and then we monitor those risks, and we adjust as needed. And it's just a loop, and it just keeps going on and on and on. We're constantly seeking out new risks, we're constantly reevaluating our current risks, and we're taking steps to mitigate those as appropriate. With things like price risk, our measurements are quite quantitative. We can easily look at historic volatility models, we can look at value at risk models, we can assign values and metrics to our portfolios that then allow us to gauge how much risk we want to take on, how much we want to measure. Do we want to manage it? Do we want to stay with the market? Do we want to protect ourselves against the market? And it all really depends on the environment we're in and the preferences of the business. But the key thing, regardless of the environment, regardless of the business's preference for risk, regardless of its risk appetite, is that we have systems in place to identify, measure, and then from there, the manage and the monitoring, that becomes very much a business decision. Businesses that want to stay with the market, want to take on risk, they will typically have a lower intervention policy. Businesses that want to insulate themselves from the market, they'll have a much more proactive, much more aggressive risk management strategy. And what it comes down to really is knowing what those risks are and how they impact the portfolio. So both something Hamish and I have spoken a lot about and have worked on in the past is position reporting. And this really, to me, is the foundation of all dairy risk management, understanding our position. So in order to position report, we want to find our net exposure, and that tells us how much risk we have to manage. And we find that by breaking our season into buckets, generally on a monthly basis. And we say, how much milk are we expecting in this particular month? How much product have we already committed in various long-term contracts, indexed contracts, and committed but priced contracts? And also what's left over. And once we take our input minus our committed outputs, we have what is at risk, what can change as the price, as the market changes. And that's what we need to focus our efforts on. We can then do this for each month, and we can get a picture of what the portfolio looks like the further out we go, and therefore how much exposure we have, how susceptible we are as time elapses. When we're doing this, and we're doing this right, every day, every week, whenever is appropriate, we can reevaluate, we can refresh our position report. So in the bigger firms, every day, we will put in our new sales. We've sold some more butter. If we're a trading firm, we've bought some more cheese. How does that affect the balance? How does that affect the net position? And we will constantly readjust to see what is at risk. What is that excess that does not account for on the other side? And through that constant adjusting, we can constantly see where our risk is. We can know what our risk is on a day-to-day or perhaps week-by-week basis. And then we can choose our appropriate risk management tools. So really, holistically, it's about being able to identify our risks, measure them, then manage as we see appropriate. And for some firms, that might be a very interventionist approach. For others, a softer touch. But nonetheless, we need to know what they are and how big they are. And once we have an understanding of that, we can then have confidence in our decision making. So hopefully that shines some light on what we mean by dairy risk management.
Thanks, Robbie. Yeah, and just one point I'd emphasise that you didn't, you ran out of time to touch on is the monitor side and the governance that needs to go around that. So you need a strong risk committee, processes to monitor the trading behaviour, etc., and also that your that the risk that you're trying to mitigate is actually being mitigated by the actions that you're taking. So yeah, it's a big subject. Absolutely. So and perhaps we should do another session some other time. So thanks everyone for tuning in. That's another episode of Udderly Understandable. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers.